Okay, everybody, we're going to get started. Councillor Brown, can you just park that conversation till morning tea, please? Tēnā tātou, tuatahi ngā mahi ki ngā mana whenua o tēnei rohe, te Ātiawa Taranaki whānui Ngāti Toa Rangatira, tuarua ngā mahi o te wiki o te reo Māori. Yeah! Ai, ka te mata me te karakia. Me noi tātou, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te a tā kura, he tio, he uka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora. Oh, we were racing through that one. Yeah, we just have so much energy for te wiki o te reo Māori. So we're going to get cracking because we've got quite a bit of public participation this morning, which is awesome. So going to start with the apologies. So I move the motion that we accept. Oh, we don't actually have any. Does anybody have any apologies? Yeah, we've got quite a few councillors online today. Okay, so no apologies. That's great. Oh, I don't reckon, you will be sweet. We will be done by 2 p.m. So next we go to conflict of interest declarations. I call on any members to declare any conflicts of interest. No. Ka pai. Confirmation of minutes. I move the motion that the minutes from the 3rd of August are confirmed as accurate, and Councillor Brown will second. Let's vote. Oh, cool. So that's carried. And there are no items not on the agenda. And so we'll move to public participation. So warm welcome to Matt Farah, who's coming to speak to us on behalf of the Trails Wellington crew. Welcome. You're welcome to join us at the table or at the lectern, whatever you're comfortable doing. So you've got 10 minutes to speak to us today. And if you wanted to answer any questions, just leave some time in that 10 minutes to answer those.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Morena, Matt Farah, Trails Wellington. Thanks for having me along. I'm not here to talk a lot. I've got one very little specific thing to talk about. I think the proposal overall looks really good. My only interest is around the resource recovery hub, which has been proposed to go on 221 to 223 Happy Valley Road, which is an area that was resolved to be Scenic Reserve 2019 Outer Belt Management Plan, was also part of the Tūāpapa grand plans that we all came and presented for and that you guys endorsed, and Tūāpapa is going to be this great recreational open spaces area, which we're very excited about, which has already been designed. And so we would really not want to see your resource recovery hub in the middle of that. So that was all we were really coming to say, that area is going to be needed for parking, for access. It's the hub. So it's where everyone will access Tūāpapa primarily, walking, riders. And so, yeah, that's just a very little thing to say, don't put it there. We'd love the idea of a hub and spoke, but just not there. I think that covers most of what I'm wanting to talk about, if you've got any questions.
Yep, we've got a few questions for you, so we'll start with Councillor Pennant.
Thanks. So you'd be prepared to spend more ratepayers' money to move it elsewhere, and I'm just interested in how you balance different environmental considerations, because reducing waste is critical.
Yeah, look, I'm supportive of the hub concept. Spoke owner, it's just, and I'm sure that if you wanted us to help you with an investigation as to where might be more suitable spots, personally, I think closer to the city for a hub would be better, but that's a personal opinion. And yeah, I know some of our Trails have already piped up with suggestions, but I don't know if that's our role to kind of help you find a new spot.
Councillor Brown.
Matt, as you know, I'm a very strong supporter of the particular trail that you're talking about. How disadvantageous would the hub at this location be for the trail? I mean, is it a real killer, or is it just sort of inconvenient?
Well, it's not just the trail, it's the whole access into Tūāpapa. It was worked through with Parks and Rec, and I'm sure they'll have a view on this too as to why it was the best location to access in and out. It was deemed to be a way that would be easier to get in, not as steep, and that there was a suitable space there for car parking. And subsequent to that, we've designed trail networks to connect into that space as well to make it more of a central spot, Tim.
Follow up. So the trail which is being built at the moment, that doesn't connect down there though?
No, this is going to have multiple trails. It's the whole Tūāpapa
gotcha.
area, so it's part of a strategy to build trails in that whole region and to regenerate it with environmental planting and everything else. And so this was the hub, so the way to get in, not one particular trail. Cool.
Cool. Councillor Abdurrahman.
Kia ora, thank you for your email. And yesterday I read it with interest, and a lot of communities also feeding back to me and Deputy Mayor. How many community members will be impacted as of this plan? How many people live in that street? Is that Rariwi Street?
Sorry, you're talking about the local community on Happy Valley Road that will be affected by this? I'm probably not the best person to give you a view on the affected residents. I think they'll probably come and speak for themselves if that's what you're meaning. We're more reflective of the trail user and community that would be wanting to use the park. Councillor?
So the other question is, do you want this option to be taken out, or do you want it to be considered as any other options?
I guess we would like you to find another place for the resource recovery hub. Not to have one, but just to not locate it on Happy Valley Road, right where we've got land that's designated scenic reserve.
Thank you.
Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much, Matt. And as you know, I'm a very strong supporter of your Trails program as well. I would like to know if where you would actually suggest having this hub, because I think it is essential, and I think it's a very good thing to have in. But of course, there's always the old saying that no one wants a tip right next to them. So if you can suggest some places, I'll be very happy to take that to officers.
Okay, look, we can go back and make some suggestions. Yeah, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Did anybody else have any questions for Matt? Yep. Deputy Mayor Foon.
Yeah, kia ora, Matt. Good to see you. Just wanting to get an idea of you'll have an idea of other parks around the country. What kind of traffic do you think we could be expecting, and at what flows during the week? As in weekends or evenings, or, What numbers are in your mind are you expecting to be needed to be parked there?
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to estimate the car parking requirements, but I think if we look at other areas, it would be substantially busier on the weekends, no question, than during the week.
Weekends busier during
Much
the week?
busier, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Cool. I think that's the end of our questions. Thank you, Matt, for joining us this morning.
Thanks for the time. Cheers.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Next, we've got Polly Griffiths from the Sustainability Trust. And Georgie, it looks like. With props, awesome. Awesome. So you've got 10 minutes to have a chat with us, and if you wanted to answer any questions, just leave time for that in that 10 minutes. Kia ora.
Do I need to press this?
Yeah, just
This on?
Upgraded.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for having us here today. I'm Polly Griffiths, Sustainability Manager at Sustainability Trust, and I'm here with Georgie Ferrari, our Chief Executive, to speak in support of the Resource Recovery Network expansion business case. So Wellington City Council has a bold and ambitious plan to lower our city's carbon emissions to net zero by 2050 and to reduce all waste by 50% to landfill by 2030. So Sustainability Trust shares and applauds these ambitious goals. We support the Council's plan to have a resource recovery hub linked to at least 3 resource recovery centres in the city. These centres are going to be critical building blocks to enable a circular economy and waste reduction in the city, really vibrant spaces visibly connecting our communities, visitors and tourists to action being taken to achieve these goals. As the first of the proposed council community resource recovery centres linked to the Resource Recovery Hub, Sustainability Trust would be a central city site, easily accessible by foot, bike or or bus, and providing more Wellingtonians, householders and organisations with services that support their efforts to reduce waste while also engaging in the circular economy transition and contributing to positive social and economic benefits for the city. We've been providing zero waste services to the city since we moved to the site of Foresters Lane in 2012. We've got the skills, capacity, infrastructure and physical resources to scale and establish a joint centre. Last year we had over 13,000 visitors and provided access to drop-off services for over 13 waste streams, including electronic waste, batteries, curtains, bicycles and plastic lids. So we're really, really excited by the opportunity and know that with a strong partnership together, we can rapidly build on what we've collectively achieved to date. As recognised in the business case, strong relationships are needed for these sites to thrive, and we're already strongly networked in the city. Our current drop-off services feed social equity programmes, our own Wellington Curtain Bank, which provides curtains to over 400 households a year, Ekarua Rebicycle, and Recycle a Device that teach children repair skills and then redistribute laptops to low-income households. We've worked with businesses in Wellington to pilot, roll out and grow composting and recycling. Kai Cycle's composting hub, they've got a drop-off service, Little Yellow Bird's textile recycling and Munch with silicon recycling, to name a couple. We're already a hub for community centres around the city. So centres like Brooklyn and Haitaitai have introduced collection points with our support for small recycling, and then it gets dropped to us. You won't believe how popular the collections of these are around the city. We'll work with Council to develop this partnership model with branding, comms, resourcing and logistics that really makes it easy for residents and businesses. The site's is about so much more than recycling, being critical for the bigger behaviour change shift to waste reduction, spaces for climate action, education, advice on how to live in a more circular way, the reuse and repair of items, the management and reduction of food waste. We'll be continuing our Repair Ed programme that resulted in over 400 items being repaired at our events last year. As part of this, we know that we must bring the waste strategy alive to our communities. With the Resource Recovery Hub and Centres delivering zero waste outcomes and community benefits that go well beyond tonnage diversion, we'll also look forward to working with the Council on their plan for measures and indicators for the waste strategy's outcomes. Research is now showing us that storytelling can help us overcome our collective cognitive dissonance over climate change that results in such a gap between the action needed and the action in practice. I liked this quote that stories can trigger an emotional response, harnessing the power of motivation, imagination and personal values, which drive the most powerful and permanent forms of social change. Every Saturday that I work in the Eco Centre, I tell stories of our stuff to our community. And I hear amazing stories back from our community and visitors to our city. People who understand that climate change is happening and want to contribute to climate action. These stories can link us all together and help us understand how our individual action links to collective action and give us a positive vision of our future. As my colleague Kim said to me yesterday, it is the stories that come out of our partnerships with organisations like Ekarua Rebicycle that keep her coming to work every day. So just my props to finish with. Just wanted to show you how centres like ours link the community and business and social equity as well. So this is the insulation that we install into people's homes to make them warmer, drier and healthier. 60% of this on average is a recycled content. We return this to Mammoth, who manufacture it in New Zealand, these offcuts, but also these go out through our community centre to people who use it. Most recently being used to insulate the bike space container hub down at Tūāpapa. And we collect these lids, thousands of these every month from our community, and they go to another recycling business in Aotearoa where they get turned into lots of different products, including one of the products that they make is a vapour barrier that we then buy off them and install into homes in the city to make them warmer, drier and healthier. And we know there are so many business opportunities like this that can be realised and scaled as a result of having these resource recovery centres in the city. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So we've got a question from Councillor Pennant.
Thank you. Looking forward to partnering with you. Just a quick question about location of shops and resource recovery. How far do you think people should have to walk, and do you support the tip shop staying at the landfill site? Kia ora.
We are going to need some spaces with storage space is needed for these sites to really realise their potential. So we are going to need a hub which has more space for being the logistics sort of hub for, like at the moment, these all go up to the tip shop for storage because the vehicles that need to collect these can't access our site in the city. So we do need I believe we do need a bigger site in the mix.
Deputy Mayor Foon.
Kia ora, Polly and Georgie, and thanks for coming in. How do you think the public will perceive the relationship with council? I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic to navigate. Yeah. And just a second question around, I know, you've had to close to be only open on Saturdays. What has been the public response to not being able to access the services all week? Thank you.
Oh, thanks for those questions. To answer your first one, I think we often experience members of the public coming in thinking that we are Wellington City Council anyway. So, and I can tell you there was outrage when we had to shut from Monday to Friday the Eco Centre for funding reasons, and people were like, I'm going to ring the council. And I'm like, we're not council run. So there's already that confusion. So I think an actual formal partnership with proper branding and good comms would be a positive thing. We're not afraid of that sort of partnership. We think it's a strong, good relationship. We've already got really good relationships with the tip shop and with the Southern Landfill site. So strengthening and clarifying that relationship and that partnership, I think, will be really positive. To go to your second question, yes, I think I sort of answered it in my first answer. We did have a range of disappointed customers, people that came regularly to drop off, people who couldn't come on the weekend because they work or for whatever other reason, people who, I felt terrible turning people away who had walked down with big bags of things. We have since tweaked our model, so we do have a drop-off bin outside the shop door, the previous shop door, that's available Monday through Friday, and people can leave things in there, and that's often full by the end of the day. So we know that the need for our service is still there. We'll need to do more comms around if we start up again about that we're back on deck, more days a week. But we know that need is there. Do you want to add anything?
I was just going to say, I think it's the small businesses in the city that might have been most impacted by the change because they don't access at the weekend, and small businesses can't necessarily afford to have a dedicated contractor, so we were really convenient for them to drop off electronic waste and batteries. So that, yeah.
Good point.
And Councillor Chung.
Great. Thank you very much. I have a question about these milk tops. We're constantly being told that we should separate them from the bottles when we throw them in the recycle bin. So how can we actually get those to you? Like, is there any? Should we actually collect them all and then bring them down to you, or what should we do?
Yeah, so that's what people do. They have to be. It's separated into different plastic types, type 2 or type 5. Then they can drop them down to us, and then we aggregate them, and then actually we work in partnership with the tip shop that allow us to store them until we've got enough to justify a vehicle coming down to collect a whole container load. Or if you live nearer to somewhere like Hataitai or Brooklyn Community Centre, they've set up drop-off points for items like this, and then they have volunteers who drop down to us.
Great. Great.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Thank you very much.
Cool. Polly and Georgie, thank you for joining us this morning. We really appreciated your insights and the props too. Thank you. Next, we've got, props for the props. Next, we've got Adam Holloway. And Adam, welcome. You've got 5 minutes to speak to us. If you want to answer any questions, you need to leave time for that in your 5 minutes, which you can see up there.
Yes, good morning, councillors. While I'm here, as I see on the agenda as an individual, I am in fact speaking on behalf of both the Awhiraba Bays Residents Association, and I've also been asked to speak to you on behalf of the body corporate in Rarangi Way.
Cool, we'll give you 10 minutes.
If that influences the time, then I'd be grateful if that could be adjusted. So my name's Adam Holloway. I live, in fact, at 27 and 29 Happy Valley Road, which is further to the south from the land that I want to talk to you about. Councillors, you should have received, I think there's been circulated an email that I sent in advance of my appearance, so if that hasn't happened, let me know. The reason I'm here is that to advocate for the reasons I put in that email, to urge you, councillors, to please consider amending the recommended motions in the paper in relation to the use of the land at 221 and 223 Happy Valley Road. In my view, in the view of the community members who I've been speaking with, taken together, the recommendations 4 through to 8 all but rule out options other than option C, which is what's been identified by officers as their preference, which is moving the tip shop to 221 and 223 Happy Valley Road. It's unclear to me whether a lot of the recycling drop-off is intended to move with the tip shop. It wasn't clear from the paper, but if that's intended, it makes the problem even more significant, because going with that will inevitably be an issue around windblown rubbish and commercial vehicles also needing to go and pick up that recycling material. In my submission, councillors, it is far too soon to express a preference for any option at this stage, because the necessary work by officers simply hasn't been done, and that's important. I also have serious misgivings about the idea of using this land, and to put it in context, we are not opposed to the concept of minimising waste. We are not opposed to the importance of having a proper place for that to happen that is accessible to the public. The submission is focused on the wisdom of using that site. And I do urge councillors to go and take a look. Go and take a look at that site. It is not big, it is on a blind corner, and it is adjacent to a residential development, Rārangi Way. This is, in our view, not a place to relocate a very significant generator of traffic movements. Again, go and be at the tip shop for a while on a weekend and experience the vehicles moving out in and out of there, and then add to that the commercial traffic that may be associated if it's being used for the recovery of recycling material. This option would also, it is plain, require council to go back on years of consultation with its community, years of planning for the Outer Greenbelt and Te Kōpapa Reserve trailhead. It isn't really credible, frankly, for that small site to perform a dual function. So option C will inevitably jeopardise the creation of that trailhead, jeopardise having a solution or a way of managing the traffic that we already have parking to go up and make recreational use of the tip track, and also potentially jeopardise one day putting a cycle lane up that side of Happy Valley Road. Because at the moment, that's where all the cars park for the people using the tip track. And if they can't access parking in association with a trailhead, then where are they going to go if we have a cycle lane up that road? The times of heaviest use for the tip track absolutely coincide with the times of heaviest use of the tip shop. Finally, I just wanted to say before I invite questions that the Awhira Bay community absolutely recognises that the southern landfill is a really important piece of civic infrastructure. We know that it will need to remain in operation for the medium term. This is not a close the dump submission. We live with the impacts of the southern landfill already every day. And I heard a councillor say nobody wants to live next to a landfill. We already do. We already participate in the management of that infrastructure by dealing with the rubbish that makes its way into the stream, by trying to restore the water quality of that stream, and by managing our lives around the heavy traffic that goes up and down that road. So we do our part, we think. What the deal we thought we had with council was having that very significant and important piece of infrastructure up Landfill Road, that council would then do its part of fulfilling the long-term planning that's been in train of maintaining buffer zones, trying to restore the ecological value of the land adjacent to the landfill, and doing what it can to protect the residential community of Awhirua Bay from the impacts of the southern landfill. What we're really disappointed to have put up as an option is this idea of starting to incrementally moving really quite significant components of the landfill operation down into our neighbourhood. You move the recycling centre, the tip shop, and then it's the recovery of recycled materials, and then the land across the road, which is also has a low use at the moment out by council. You start to change the character of that whole end of Happy Valley Road away from being residential, away from being a neighbourhood where kids walk down to the nearby primary school, into that, light industrial landfill associated use. Wellington's really lucky. You compare it to, Dunedin, where you have the landfill down in an open flat space where it rubs up against its community. We have it in a relatively fortunate place up that gully road. That's not to say it doesn't come with impacts. We live with those, but it's a good place for it. This, so far as I can see, putting up this option in the face of the long-term planning in your own planning documents for this to be a trailhead and instead repurpose it really comes down to money. And I absolutely acknowledge and appreciate the council has to grapple with that as a significant issue. But I ask the council to consider whether it would be a better use of its money to acquire a more suitable site elsewhere, either up Landfill Road or in another part of the city, as I hear some other submitters advocating for. So thank you for hearing me out. I'm only one person, but I can assure you that standing behind me are many, many other members of my community who share my views.
Great, thank you, Adam. So we've got a question from Councillor Pannett.
Thank you. And I appreciate your strong commitment to the environment as well, Adam. So just curious about how you kind of balance all these things, because the idea, as you know, is to turn this into a resource recovery place with a bit for dumping, but it's not going to be a tip forever. So how do you balance those two things about making it more accessible and easier to access these resource recovery centres?
So the issue around accessibility at the moment, as articulated in the paper, is around cycling and walking, right? If you're driving a vehicle to the landfill at the moment, then the tip shop and the resource recovery is absolutely accessible. So the solution is to try and move it to a site where it can also be navigated to by cycle and walking. Probably, actually, for that to be easy, we're talking about a whole other part of the city. But if you still want it down there, then acquire some land up Landfill Road. Putting it there to save just the cycling and walking problem requires you to choose that outcome over all of the adverse effects that flow with it. The loss of the trailhead, the wind-blown rubbish, the vehicle movements, the change of character of a neighbourhood.
And just the other question was, if the cost was significantly more to find an alternative site, you are comfortable as a community to pay that cost as ratepayers?
I am a wonderful advocate for taxation in all of its forms. And look, yes, it will cost money, but I mean, look, think of this in dollars and cents. How much value are you knocking off Rarangi Way by putting that there? I mean, that's not where I live, but maybe ask those people to give their view about that.
Okay, great. I think we're going to have to move on with our time, but if you wanted to stick around for morning tea, I'm sure councillors might have some questions if you're available for that. So
Thank you, Madam
thank you for presenting to us, Adam. Much appreciated. Next, we've got Sue Coots from Zero Waste Network Aotearoa. Kia ora, Sue. So you've got 10 minutes, and if you wanted to save some time to answer some questions at the end, just leave that within your time. Thank you.
Okay, well, Atamare, yeah, good to see you all here, and it's, I just want to say, well done for getting this proposal to this point. A few years ago we started coming along to these meetings going, wouldn't it be great if there was a zero waste story going on in the city? And I just feel so proud of you all for doing the hard work that's been required to get us to this point. We've got the zero waste strategy, we've got the zero waste program, and now we're starting to see the kind of the tricky part where the rubber hits the road, and we've got some real proposals coming on the table. And as we could hear from the last speaker, it's not always easy to tease out the, what's the value of this proposal versus that proposal, what are the impacts going to be. But I feel like there's a really great start being made in the papers. I guess you guys would have waded through the 600 pages as well, and there's a lot of information and detail in there which is starting to give us a really good story to tease out some of these things, some of these questions. And we're hearing people coming to the table this morning with some of the problems that could arise from certain options, some of the benefits, and I think that that's really a useful place to be. That's the purpose of the papers, is to get all that out there. I guess what I really wanted to do is just register my support, or Zero Waste Network support, for the general direction of travel. We see around the world, when you get a good, solid collection system, comprehensive in place, that's a really great base to start with. And then on top of that, you need to add on all the other services that are the local resource recovery services that we're talking about in the second paper, the kinds of like the reuse options, getting all the zero waste events and all the other things that support those big scale collection projects. And one of the things that I wanted to focus on today is the role that the community sector and small business has to play in that. One of the things that the papers noted was that there is a lot of value from small to medium-sized organisations, whether they're community enterprises, social enterprises, small business, that they can bring to developing this network of resource recovery facilities that we need in the city and services. And what, the focus in the paper was really on the shared outcomes. If you have a common purpose and you're working together to achieve the city's goals, then that's really good if you have a partner that's related in that way. But I think one of the things that's missing is the idea that these organisations are also businesses, and a lot of them are substantial. An organisation like Sustainability Trust is in the top 2% of businesses in the city by employment. Got 35 employees there. Most businesses in Wellington City are very small. 70% are sole traders. You've got, a large number of the balance of those, something like 20%, are only less than 5 employees. So really, when you're thinking about how are you going to be developing these additional services that are going to come in alongside the big global contracts, you have to hold in mind the idea that you're actively supporting the local economic development of the city by allocating or awarding contracts to these smaller players. It's not about, a lot of people when they're thinking about community sector, they see a small organisation doing a local activity for free. But the businesses that we see across our network are large enterprises who are employing 50, 60, 70 people. They're turning over in the millions of dollars, $5, $6, $7 million. And once you get the idea of having a network of facilities across the city is something which has been happening in Auckland for since 2015. They've been working with exactly the same sort of things that you guys are grappling with now to try to find their pathway through that. And they are also once you have the idea of the network, you can have a big global contract which will bring you a big chunk of extra diversion, and you can have multiple small activities that can also bring you a big chunk of change. If you look across our network, we have 1,400 employees, 75 organisations, so 1,400 employees across the country, 17,000 volunteers involved in the activities that our members are doing. We've got 64,000 tonnes being diverted from landfill. We've got 91 million in turnover collectively, so it's across 75 organisations. And the reason I'm saying that is just to give you a sense that when we're talking about a resource recovery centre run by a community organisation, whether that's north, south, east or west, waste, we're not talking about something that's dinky die, happens on a Thursday afternoon and a bunch of mums are there, It's actually a big business enterprise. And I think it's a really important thing for you to hold that in mind when you're thinking about the opportunity that's there and the kinds of processes that need to be in place to support that. The idea of a resource recovery network is something that's emerging. That's something that the ministry is working on. It's something that a lot of councils are starting to get their heads around. And I think that the idea of there's a multiple different parts to the system. There's the back end, industrial scale, landfill type activities, which really do need to be on those out of the way industrial sites that can cope with the big traffic and all of that. But you also need to have the mid-scale things which are in the neighbourhoods, which give people access to services. And what we see with our membership is organisations like, say, Wastebusters down south or Extreme Zero Waste. They're actually places which are important and valued by their community. They're a hub for sustainability stuff. They're a place which has answers, that provides you with solutions, that gives you access to education and information that you might not get from other places. And so then you also have the smaller, tiny places which can be just a portal for materials or things to come in, and then they can be transported back up to a bigger facility. So I think when you're thinking about your procurement options, you really need to be thinking you've got, at the moment, the big global contracts that often just go to the big multinational companies, but there's so many ways that you guys can structure your procurement story to feed money back into the local economy. And I think that that's something that we're seeing in those, starting to come through in those documents, is that idea of exploring and developing those opportunities. The last thing that I'd say is that the network model is really important. You heard Sustainability Trust talking about partnerships, and I think that partnership with council is very important because we have that shared goal of working towards zero waste. But it's so important to have a good balance between community-led and council-led, finding the mechanism that's going to enable that partnership to work really well will require some work and some time. And I think that the second business case is indicative, and I think that that's something that's worth investing some energy in as well. And there's some good examples across Auckland of what the steps they've taken and the structures that they've used to try to integrate all of the sites together so that they can achieve so much more than any one could achieve on its own. Yeah, so well done for getting to this point where you get to have an argument about what happens next. Yeah, sometimes that feels uncomfortable, but that's actually a really great sign that you're making progress and that something real is going to happen. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Sue. Does anybody have any questions for Sue? Yeah, I thought that was really extensive and really helpful. So thank you, Sue, for joining us this morning.
Often what happens when I speak to people is they just look a bit stunned. So if anyone has any questions, just feel free to reach out. Always welcome to have a chat or have a talk about ideas or things that are happening. Kia ora.
Thank you. And we've just got one more submission until morning tea, so if you wanted to stick around, we might be able to have a chat with you, Sue. So the last submission for this morning is on Zoom, and welcome Liam Prince and Kate Walmsley from Kaicycle.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Liam. So you've got 10 minutes, and if you wanted to answer any questions, just leave some time for that.
Awesome. Kia ora koutou. Thanks so much for having us. Sorry we couldn't be there in person, and fingers crossed that the connection holds up. But just really, Liam and Kate here from Kaicycle, and really just here, I guess like Sue and Sustainability Trust, just to provide our support for this really great work that's been done. There's obviously a lot of effort gone into these business cases. And a real sense that council wants to prioritise this zero waste program while still making space for community providers. So it's really encouraging to see. In particular, it was great to see some ideas on how the collection contracts in the first business case could be structured to give space to operators like us at Kaicycle and other community providers, and recognition that ongoing support is really important. So just wanted to support this work and acknowledge that things are moving in a really encouraging direction. I just wanted to support also some of the points that Sue has made on I guess, harnessing the opportunities for diverse and innovative models that could have a really important role to support and strengthen these plans, particularly around organics, collections and processing. And look, I'm not just talking about KaiCycle. There are lots of great models we could look to. I know in the business case, it suggests the Tonkin and Taylor consultants aren't aware of any citywide models like ours internationally, but we ourselves have been really inspired and encouraged by some great models of what is possible when a local authority gets behind localized services and social enterprises in the space. So one example is here on the screen, the city of Besançon in France, population of 1,200. The services involve a cooperative social enterprise, Trivial Compost, and they are contracted by the local government waste management entity to establish and support small-scale composting sites at apartment blocks, businesses and schools, while local authorities manage medium-scale processing sites across the city. Since 2012, this partnership has established over 300 composting sites at apartment blocks all over the city and surrounding areas, and many more sites at businesses and schools as well. The partnership also offers other services like home composting and agricultural waste composting. And I'll note too that like New Zealand, all European Union member states are required to separately collect organic materials, but much sooner, by 1st of January next year. And the local authorities in Besançon are intending to meet this obligation through their existing approach. If I could go to the next slide, please. Another really cool model is in New York City, where the Department of Sanitation has long pursued what they call, quote, a multi-tiered organics diversion strategy that includes curbside composting, community composting, drop-off composting, as well as backyard and home composting, end quote. The city has a number of medium-scale composting sites, many of which were established and are operated by social enterprises in partnership with local government, and they each process several hundreds of tons of organic materials. The materials for these medium-scale sites and also many small-scale community sites across the city are sourced via a network of over 200 drop-off sites. And these services sit alongside and complement the Department of Sanitation's curbside collection services, which take those materials to large-scale regional facilities. The Department of Sanitation in New York has found that areas of the city with that have more numerous master composters who are graduates of this composting training program they support, and also where there are more food scraps drop-off sites, they have seen the greatest increases in participation of the city's curbside collection service. And that really indicates that these different services and offerings can be mutually reinforcing. There are some really great resources about this New York composting model, including a webinar from last year, which I'd be very happy to share if anyone's interested. And next slide, please. So while we don't have anything that's nearly as advanced here in Aotearoa, we do have promising alternatives model like the Bertha medium-scale in-vessel composting system developed by Community Compost Nelson that can process over 400 tons a year for just a few $100,000. Or the City to Farm up on Hibiscus Coast north of Tamaki Makaurau, who are working directly with farmers to build soil and grow crops using composted food scraps. And there are many more examples. There's even the Wellington City Council's own Community Composting Hubs trial, which has great potential to expand and could, for example, be a great way of offering a service to community facilities like schools and marae to do composting on site and unlock the opportunities that come from keeping it local. We also have a really well-connected community sector through organisations like the Zero Waste Network, as Sue has discussed, but also the Aotearoa Composters Network and kaupapa Māori organisations like Parakore and Te Waka Kai Ora, who are all supporting each other in building best practice. And I just wanted to point out at this stage, make you aware of a collaborative waste minimisation fund application that involves these 4 networks I just mentioned to develop a coordinated, tiriti-centred approach to rolling out small and medium-scale composting systems across Aotearoa. The Ministry for the Environment are really keen on this idea of a coordinated approach and to see it joined up with the rollout of organics collections and processing infrastructure that councils will be required to implement in the coming years. It's still in the application stage, but we are looking at possible partners in areas to conduct pilots, especially where councils are keen. So this could be an opportunity for Wellington, and it would be great to talk more about this opportunity as the detailed business case gets developed. And finally, we just wanted to comment on the brief discussion of Kaicycle's business model that is early on in the business case, page 76 of the agenda, or page 38 of the business case itself, just to clear some things up. Firstly, the dollar amounts calculated are incorrect, and they make our service seem far more expensive than it actually is. So the annual charge for Kaicycle household customers is $414, including GST, which is far less than the $1,794 per year figure that was quoted in the business case. It's a monthly fee, not a weekly fee. So we can see why that was how they arrived at that figure, but that's incorrect. Now, even with that said, we are well aware our costs per household are higher relative to costs for large-scale curbside collections in other cities and districts. We have tried to point this out in previous discussions with council that there are good practical reasons for this. For example, we have a sparsely distributed customer base, which is inefficient compared to collecting from every household on a street, which we would do if we could. We provide a clean bucket rather than leaving a customer to deal with a dirty bucket, which means additional labor costs for cleaning, but we could drop that service to drop our fees too. But also these fees for household customers, along with higher fees we charge for business customers, they actually cover the costs of everything that Kaicycle composting does under an integrated service. So it's not just collections, it's also composting, it's product marketing, what happens to our compost, it's customer service, communications, community outreach, and education, and more. Whereas a curbside collection is simply a collection and logistics service. So we're not comparing like-for-like services. So we'd like to request that if these costings and the commentary are going to be included in the detailed business case, can these figures please be corrected and also assessed on equal terms to the level of service that is provided. And just really to reiterate that we see what Kaicycle offers is complementary to a citywide collection service. We know we can't compete on the economies of scale of a truck-based collection service, but nor do we want to. We want to build some resilience and diversity into Wellington's organics diversion program. And in particular, we want to be part of the opportunity to put small and medium scale infrastructure in place between now and 2026, so that we at least have some local processing capacity when the collections start rolling out, so we don't have to be trucking this valuable organic material to another facility outside of the region at significant cost. But we can keep it local and do more of the good things that we already do to support waste reduction, food security, soil restoration, emissions reduction, and behavior change. Yeah, that's it from me. Happy to take any few questions.
Thank you, Liam, and thank you for that presentation that you prepared for us. So we've got time for probably one question, if anyone had one. No, it looks like you've been really clear. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, just a big thank you to all of the people who have come and presented to us this morning. We've, really absorbed your local and specialist knowledge on this issue and really appreciate it as we head towards making a decision very shortly. But first, we're going to take a morning tea break, so we'll take 15 minutes roughly. So be back in 15 minutes. should we get started? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sweet. Yeah. Oh, I hope so. Okay, so we're going to get into it. So we are currently getting a printed copy of all the amendments for you, so just know that that's coming. Even though we're trying to reduce waste, we're also trying to reduce time of this meeting. So, okay. So, all right. So we're going to start with 2.1 Zero Waste Program Collections and Processing Business Case. So I'll invite Chris to introduce the paper and to answer any questions that we might have, as well as Jenny.
Excellent, thank you. Just to step back a little bit, I just want to talk briefly about the waste strategy. So earlier in the year, the Council approved the waste strategy and the associated targets. The collections and resource recovery business case provides options to meet these targets. We will not meet our emissions reductions targets or any of the zero waste targets without these diversion projects that you see in front of you. The options and recommendations presented today are part of the LTP process. We recognise the importance of community consultation and the need to present detailed business cases back to you in May. And I'd just like to thank the waste team for all the hard work. As you've seen, there's a ton of business cases and papers that goes into this effort. So there's, as the chair mentioned, there's two business cases we're talking about. The first is the collections and organics processing one. So I'll talk through that, and then then you have your discussion. We'll come back to resource recovery network. So the first business case. So firstly, it is imperative for our emissions targets and for to sustain extend the life of the landfill that we remove organics from our waste system. Timing-wise, we have an ageing fleet. We have contracts that expire in 2026. We are not in a position to extend these contracts further. Therefore, it's important to decide on the collection services within the next 6 to 12 months. We've been partnering with the regional councils to develop the organics processing, and we're in the process of applying for MFE funding. We will know the status of that funding around April or May next year, and that will feed into the detailed business case for your consideration. Officers are recommending that 3 options are explored in the consultation process, along with the status quo. A detailed commercial case will be presented in May 2024. That is all.
Awesome. Does anybody have any questions on the Zero Waste Program Collections and Processing Business Case? Yep, Councillor Abdurrahman.
Chris, thank you so much first. And if option is open, all options are open for decision making later on, why option 3 is come as a preferred option?
Option 3? So are we talking about the organics and collections, or are we talking about resource recovery?
Yeah, so that's for the next paper.
Oh, that's the next one.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions on this paper, 2.1? No?
No, behind you.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you. Just want to ask a question about recommendation number 31. It says to agree allocate 8.1 million in 26-27 and 9.9 million in 27-28 of the capital expenditure. In terms of approving this clause, are we actually making the agreement even though we haven't done the long-term plan, or should this really be amended to recommend that this goes into the long-term plan?
My understanding is that resolution has been adjusted by officers and has been circulated.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Is it just about to be circulated, Councillor?
Oh, didn't I put that out this morning? Yeah, we got it this morning. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I've got to recheck that paper. Thank you. So I did see that, Siobhan. Thank you for that. That's my question.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, that's cool. So going to hand it over to Deputy Mayor Foon to move the paper.
Atamarie, and just a big mihi to all of our speakers this morning. I really want to acknowledge those of you who have really been doing a lot of the mahi in this space to show us what's possible so that we ourselves can follow behind the movement that's happening globally and across Aotearoa. I just want to say that we're going to table the Q&A as part of this paper. Very informative, great questions. And yes, this is about he ana mata parakore mō pōneke. So, and this paper particularly is one of the big building blocks on the journey, thank you Councillor Matthews, that we have been on. So this is the collections and processing review. And yes, as we can see, it's been a mighty piece of work. So thank you to all the team. I knew it was complex, but that is even going beyond what I understood. So yes, this is a journey, and we have been on this journey for a long time now, and actually Councillor Pannett has been on it for a very long time. But we need to understand that we wanted to commit to this journey for important reasons, but what we've done, that we've heard already this morning, we've reversed the decision of a massive landfill going up into Kerry's Gully to encroach on Zealandia. We made that decision and we changed it. We have made an action to take the sludge out of our landfill, which is a gross way for a capital city to be treating our waste, which is actually a resource. Thank you for all of those that have supported that. We've then finally got together a zero waste strategy and a program to go forward with, and these two are part of the big building. This included signing off a small landfill extension, which was a rat that some of us had to swallow in the zero waste space. Apparently you have to do that in politics. And the why are we doing this? Because as a society, we need to show kaitiaki for te taiao. We need to meet our emissions reductions by 2030 that we've already committed to. We've committed to wanting to be zero waste and to reduce our waste by half by 2030. We've got a government that's saying you need to remove organics by 2030. And we are also seeing that we are embarrassing, lagging behind other cities in the world, being the third highest production of waste. New Zealanders, not so pure New Zealand. I think we have to change that. I just want to also acknowledge the opportunities, which is actually why I love this space. I didn't start wanting to remove sludge from the landfill. I started seeing the opportunity of resources that we could put through our community to create multiple benefits for other organisations to do well out of. This is why I'm here, and this is why I champion it. And we've heard about efficiencies, and actually we just need to future-proof what we're doing, because the increased costs are coming to landfill through higher levy charges and ETS, which are really volatile, as we've heard at the moment. I just want to appreciate that actually this is a complex piece of work that will be tricky to bring our community along with us, because we are taking away, we're asking them to change from their individual choice to a targeted rate by council. I just want you to know that's not going to be easy. But fortunately, we are not the pioneers for once, and we've got about 5 other councils that we can learn from to get this right. And just want to acknowledge it's not perfect. We're not going to get everyone, and so really acknowledge the bespoke service and our approach to that, but also our central city is going to miss out, but that could be an opportunity for others. So at this point, I just want to really thank all the staff and the hours and hours that have gone into this. You've made my head spin this weekend, but also just to talk to the few amendments that I've brought into the paper. And really what we heard about this morning, I can't say this is around organics processing. I'm not a big fan of what we're proposing, but it's another compromise to help us get us to the place that we need to be. And what I just want to make sure of is that we don't section out the opportunities that other organisations have by being able to access the resource that we control to enable multiple benefits for the community and the environment. And it was good to see that, yes, My Utopia is a garden on every square kilometre of neighbourhood in Wellington City that people can put their food resource into and create food for their community. I admit we're a long way off, but I will keep going to that point, to that place, and I see this as a transition opportunity. So with that, I move the paper and thank you all to all of you councillors for your support that you've shown in the past. I really appreciate it. Kia ora.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So we're going to go, do you want to speak now or should we go to amendments? Cool, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Pennant, for seconding.
So look, I do see this as a little bit of an historic day, that we are seriously grappling with our resource use, which is a key environmental concern, and not to be bleak, but I'm just looking at a news article how we've breached 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries, safe limits for human life. We are in some level of crisis, and so we now need to take actions very, very quickly. It has been a long road. In 2011, the 16th of May to be precise, we put out our yellow recycling bins, and we're now at 2023 and going for the next step. It has been a very long time. The money was put in 2018, but nevertheless, we are here. I would very much like to thank the community for their amazing leadership. You know, the thinking that is done and the education they do. I've learned a lot. The staff have been amazing, and I just want to thank previous staff who I didn't always agree with, but to them, they have allowed us some money. Yeah. We're not coming here with our hand out, and that's fantastic. And of course, the Deputy Mayor for her relentless positivity in this important area. So look, this is so much more than just dealing with a bit of mandarin peel. It is about food security, soil enrichment, making sure that we do not waste a single thing that the planet yields to us. And what's also wonderful to see is the regional cooperation that we're looking at as well, because we do not need a whole lot of organic processing plants, so that is good. I do want to just raise just a few issues which I think we're going to have to keep talking about. What I love about this is that it means that we will hopefully see the end, or at least much less, of the big bins, which are very bad because it does encourage people to waste. But I do acknowledge that this is going to cost some households more, and I'm one of them, and I was a bit grumpy with staff and said, well, why should I be paying more? It's not much, and really it's for the collective good, because if you're composting already, it should be reasonably cheap. I also just want to raise a question around the complexity of the system. I know even in my household, in spite of many hours of education, understanding how the system works is quite difficult, and I think a lot of people find it. You need to separate, and I think we will need to walk with our community on that one. I'm a little bit ambivalent about getting rid of user charges. I always supported that because it is about polluter paying. But I appreciate that putting it under a rating system means that we get a system for everyone, not just some people. And the last point I want to raise, look, I think it is very tricky. I mean, my preference is that people compost at home. And I appreciate that's difficult for apartment dwellers, although not impossible. Because that is a very resilient solution. It's very cost effective just to buy. Even my state-of-the-art hungry bin, now 8 years old, is going strong, and it will last me for many years. And the idea of big trucks running around isn't ideal. The Deputy Mayor and I have a slight difference of a perspective. I don't really love carrying my compost around to the community garden, but some people will, and if they're made more accessible, I think that will be a lot easier. But look, this is great. It's just fantastic. I can't wait to roll this out to the community. And just a big thanks to everyone, because it's been such a big collective effort, and I'm so grateful for the work.
Thank you. So we are just sorting out some things with your amendment, Councillor Calvert. So is it all right if we just keep going with debate until we've sorted that out? Sweet. And who's your seconder? Just so that I'm all... Oh, Councillor Chung? Yeah, sweet. Okay, good to know. Okay, so who else would like to debate? Cool. Sorry, Councillor, you can't yet. Just wait for. Okay, I will. So I just really want to echo the thanks to officers for all of this mahi, but I really just want to recognise you, Deputy Mayor Foon. You really have put this issue on the map. You know, to be honest, it's not an issue I knew a lot about prior to coming onto council, and thanks to all of your passionate kōrero around the table, I know a lot more, and you are somebody that walks the talk, and but you don't shame people, and I think that's a really important part of it too. So I've always got a little lorry in my head whenever I think about buying a coffee and don't get a takeaway cup. And I also wanted to acknowledge Councillor Pannett for all of the work that you've done on zero waste, and I remember when I first stood for council, we were having a debate and I said that I wanted everyone to be recycling, and I thought recycling was the key, and you were like, no, it's about zero waste, and in my head I was like, that's impossible, but it's clear that it is possible and that we have taken steps towards making it a reality. And I think that does reflect, because that was one of the things that I wanted when I first came into council, was to clear the blacklist, you know, where there were a whole bunch of streets and properties, you know, mainly student flats that were banned from recycling. And I think that it represents the punitive system that we used to have, but this paper represents the inspiring way forward for waste in Wellington and how we deal with that. So yeah, so big thanks to you, Chris and Jenny and Dill and everybody that's here from the waste team. You've really invigorated this conversation and have really moved it into a different space. I think it's possible for us to have a zero waste city. I think it's deeply wrong to fill the whenua with rubbish and pata, and you know, knowing that that's going to limit the use of that land for a very, very long time. I love the parts in this paper that talk about making the work and the mahi safer for the workers, you know, the people who are actually picking up our bins, and you know, I always worry about them and the injuries that they sustain when collecting our rubbish, so it's good to see that that will be improved to an extent. And I do want to echo what Councillor Pannett was saying about education, and like, we do need to make sure that it's really clear and consistent around what you can and can't get rid of, and how that all goes. So particularly when you've got a whole bunch of people moving to Wellington from different parts of the country to study or to work here, you know, that consistency is important, and making sure that's super clear is really important too. So yeah, this is a great day, but yeah, massive shout out to you, Deputy Mayor Foon, for all your mahi, and hopefully that was enough speaking to go to Councillor Calvert. Or we could adjourn for a few minutes unless anybody else wanted to speak. You can't, sorry, Councillor Chung, yet. Okay, we'll adjourn for a couple of minutes. Oh, yes, my bad. I withdraw and apologise. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Councillor Calvert to introduce her amendments, and if you check your email, you will have the most up-to-date amendments, and we are getting a physical copy. So I'll hand that over to Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. And I just want to echo the comments already made about Deputy Mayor Foon and Councillor Pannett for their work that they have done in getting this paper to us. Deputy Mayor Foon will know that I've always said not another zero waste workshop. Can we just get on and do it? So we seemed, and when Councillor Pannett was leading the charge, sort of for my 7 years on council, I've thought we just got to get on and do something. And so I do appreciate the work that's been done. However, there's always a however. Or a but. Or a but. And I would have been comfortable with this until yesterday. And look, and I appreciate these papers were completed a week ago. And probably completed before we got information yesterday about the city's finances. And what we do know going forward, whilst we don't know the specifics, we do know that we are going to have to reduce our capital expenditure each year by tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And when we looked, that's why I took advice. So it is not an easy position, and I really would have preferred not to have had to, if these amendments had been moved as part of the substantive, I wouldn't have had to say anything. So I just, and even when we discussed yesterday how we might go forward, finish what we've started, meet any legal obligations, address underperforming infrastructure. So we've got lots of good work to do. We know we produce 400 different services a year. And we also know we've got a lot of other funding commitments. And this is out there, but it probably hasn't been brought together. We're making commitments for Let's Get Wellington Moving. We've got commitments for more money to be spent on Tanaka Civic Square in the region of probably hundreds of millions of dollars. We've got to invest in our venues. We've got our social housing upgrade that still needs to be funded. That's probably in the region of $400 million. We've got recreation and community facility upgrades required. We've got urban development upgrades. We've got water reform, and we were all at that workshop on Monday where, as Councillor Brown pointed out, it's probably an investment by this council of an additional $50 million a year for the next 10 years. And we've also got, as we know, rising insurance costs and cost of living and where the economic conditions are, and not to mention addressing the seismic issues with buildings that we own. So we are facing significant challenges coming up, and we're going to have to make significant decisions. And so whilst I agree this is a really important piece of work, I don't believe that we can say categorically it should be in the LTP consultation document. It might well be. It may well be in the framework in our decision making, but we shouldn't be saying it's definitely going in the LTP consultation. What these amendments are saying, bring it forward to the LTP deliberations when we decide what will be in that consultation document. So agree to consider at that stage, not agree to put it in definitely because of the significant challenges that we've got to go ahead. And I don't want to pick the winners right here and now, because we need to do that in a cohesive way and with full picture. And so this is what this enables us to do without committing us to put it into the LTP consultation document. So, as Councillor Pannett said, we're in some level of crisis, but this crisis that I'm talking about is not necessarily from the climate change. This is a financial crisis for us. So I do ask for your support on this. This is strictly a financial amendment. It's not, I don't want it to be seen as a political amendment, but it's about good governance. It's about being fiscally prudent, and it's actually about delivering what we should be here for as governors in terms of good financial management. I understand Councillor Chung is going to support second.
Cool. Before we move on to the debate, we'll just have an opportunity for councillors to ask any questions of officers. So,
sorry, could I just raise a point of order? Could I just get a little bit of clarity about whether it was appropriate for some of those financial details in Councillor Calvert's speech to be revealed in a public debate, and if so, why?
So my understanding is that Councillor Calvert sought legal advice from General Counsel around what she could and couldn't disclose in debate, and so I was listening carefully to the way that she framed that, and I don't think she was specific in what she disclosed in her speech.
So just to clarify, because this has some pretty significant implications for how we debate over the next few weeks, that particular information is all good to be shared in public?
The way that she framed it, because do you remember verbatim the way that she framed it?
I remember the figure specifically.
She didn't mention the figure. She said tens of millions or hundreds of millions was the framing. So
okay, sweet.
That
framing's all good.
Well, she said it now, so there's not really anything you can do about it.
It's going to have to be. All right, sweet. No, all good.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to keep moving on. So this is an opportunity to ask questions about Councillor Calvert's amendments of Siobhan. So, yep, Councillor Matthews.
Just want to check, the paper is written, and there's some amendments that have already gone into the substantive to make it clear that this is we're at the beginning of a process. We're not in a final decision process. We will consider the outcomes of the business cases as part of the subsequent debate around the long-term plan.
Yes, you will. There may be a timing issue, though. So in terms of when those business cases coming back, it's May. So it's once you've done that consultation.
And I guess probably I was going to ask a question of Andrea, but then I turned around and I saw she wasn't there. But
Raina's here.
Raina's here. And you probably can answer this, but in terms of budget and how these things all interact with each other, that is going to come to us much later in the process.
That will come to you before you go out for consultation for the.
But
LTP.
in the entire budget for the LTP.
Correct.
Yes. And do these amendments, work needs to proceed, and do these, I'm interested in how much these amendments actually change what work can be done or what is necessary to happen.
So these amendments wouldn't change the work that we're planning to continue on these business cases.
Other questions on the amendment? No? Okay, so we're going to hand it over to Councillor Chung to speak, if you wish.
Great, thanks very much. Those of you who know me, you know that I don't like wasting money. And so what I'm looking at this project is, and I have to say that I am actually very torn, because there are whole aspects of it that I really like, but there are aspects that I'm concerned more about, and the effect on people. In the last, maybe the last 10 years, I walk around our neighbourhood of Broadmeadows twice a day, and I see the rubbish, and I see the recycling material that's actually in people's rubbish bins. I see bags of rubbish full of grass clippings. I see branches and things in there. And so what I've been doing is I've been going to talk to all these neighbours, and we have a neighbourhood mulching garage now, and so we go there, we take all these branches up, we mulch them all, we put them all back, and then we compost them all. So we take the grass clippings up, we do all those things with it. So I've been encouraging people to actually look at everything they do and to try and minimise their wastage. So now we have, I have one rubbish bag every 3 months, and so I've been encouraging my neighbours to actually do the same and say that this is a target that's well worth achieving. So what I'm concerned about on the negative side of this is that we're spending a lot more money to actually try and make things better, but I am, like Councillor Calvert, I am very concerned about the amount of money we actually have to pay to actually do these things. See, I think that education and convincing behaviour change is extremely important, but I've proven that it can be done. I've had people that had maybe 3 bags of rubbish a week, and they've got those now down to a very minimum. And so I'm going around now on the Monday mornings when the rubbish truck comes around, and I'm seeing maybe half the number of bags that used to go out. So I think that this is all very possible. So I'm afraid that if we implement this, then what's that going to do to these people that have been trying so hard to actually minimise their own waste? They're going to be saying that, well, we have to support all the people that don't, aren't careful about their rubbish, that aren't careful about what things they do. So I guess that's my concern about this. So I think that we should, as the amendment says, we should put it into the long-term plan to be considered. But I don't think that if we just go ahead with it, I just think that it's going to be a bit of a slur on all the people that are working so hard to actually do these things themselves. And especially, we've been educating people about how to use their waste, what to do with it, and especially those people with pets, the dog poop and the cat poop and things, how you can actually do more with those things rather than just throw them away. What to do with your food scraps? We have. I don't even know how little food scraps we have. I don't think it's anything. Even the bones we actually grind up and put into the compost. And so I think that all these things can be done. And it's like, if we go ahead with this, I actually feel somehow that we're saying, okay, you can still be lazy, you still not put time into this, and just put these things into the bin. So I just feel as if we're not pushing enough into education and trying to get behaviour change from people. So that's why I'll second this amendment. Thank you.
Cool. Councillor Pennant.
Just really briefly, I understand the sentiment, but I'll be voting against all of them because it's essentially a weakening of a commitment we have to make. We have been talking about it for a very long time, and this essentially puts it in a competing list of priorities. And I'm sorry, this constant kind of, we've got the climate crisis, but we've also got a financial crisis. The climate crisis is, you can't even put them in the same planet. They're so much different, and to be saying, we can trade them off against each other. It is time for action. It's well overdue, and we need to stop seeing that the denial that action is needed.
Thank you, Councillor Free.
Thank you. And look, I will support this because I'm almost 100% sure I'm going to vote for it. But I do think there's a process issue whereby if our long-term plan is about getting everything together in one place and deciding how we're going to create that plan and what's going to go into it at what funding level, and that is a discussion which needs to be kept for the right context and the right place, and we've actually got everything in front of us. So I did note the wording that was there before this amendment, and I thought it's a bit odd that we're actually voting to put things into a long-term plan when that process is still taking place. And we do have a lot of competing priorities, and I'm sure for me personally this is really high up on the list, which is why I'm starting to think about other things which might be a little bit more adjustable. But I don't think process really matters. And I've learned that over 10 years. If you try and short-circuit a process, it's never a good thing. So I do support this because I think it's making clear there's still a process here. And it's not stopping anything from happening. It's just making sure that we're guarding our process.
Kia ora koutou. I mean, just to be clear, this is actually circumventing the process we have all agreed to and are working our way through. So, this is a change to the process that we are going through. The challenges to local government funding and to Wellington City Council in terms of the financial challenges and many other challenges, as Councillor Pennant outlined, are well documented, and we've shared and discussed that listener article. These amendments do not change those challenges. They do not, make our ability to make informed and sensible and logical decisions at the right time any easier. In fact, they make it more difficult because we need to build a plan as we go, and we build it with our decisions. And there is a reason we do not make every single decision about the long-term plan at the end of the process, because it would be impossible. It would be too difficult, so we do need to make some calls. They are not final calls, but we will be making decisions. I'm very clear on this. The level of service decisions will be coming to us again, before we have a draft budget, because we need to make calls on what we think is important, what our priorities are as an organisation. They are not our final decisions. We can still change them. Local government decision-making processes go around forever. So we are not backed against a wall here, and that is very clear, and that is the advice I understand the councillor has been given. This is not a final decision. However, we are indicating this is where we want to go. And to be honest, I've heard mixed things from the mover and seconder about how this sits in terms of the process. But I'm very clear that the work that we have done up until this point has led us to this point, and we need to keep moving and do the work. So draft budget will come to us at the end of the year. None of these decisions are final. This does not make the challenges go away. And we are working through a process. We are building the plan with our decisions. We need to keep building it. This kind of rationale could be led to us not deciding anything for the next year, but we actually need to. That is the process of a long-term plan. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Young.
Hi, thank you. So first of all, I am concerned that Ray is grinding up bones and putting them into his compost, because on my composting list, I would have thought that's a no-no, but perhaps he likes little animals with long tails that come out at night. But I do support these amendments. I am deeply concerned about our financial position, and I don't think we can consult on this, would you like to do this, without letting people know how the city's finances are at the moment. So I will be supporting this amendment.
Thank you. Right of reply.
Thank you. And just to note that these amendments had come with officer support as well, so they clearly understood what was intended.
Can I just clarify? Sorry, point of order. Can I just clarify that? I think officers have worked through the wording rather than support the amendments.
Yeah, so my words were we are comfortable with it. We're relatively agnostic. It's for you to debate.
Okay. So anyway, in terms of this, it is a process. And the process is quite clearly laid out. Come February, March, we will decide what goes in the consultation document. We need to have everything on the table. Whether all the projects are all about climate change, could well be. We may have to trade off some of the climate change or mitigation projects. We may not be able to do everything according to Councillor Pannett. I know, I'm sorry. But we need to do that in a cohesive way. If you don't agree with these amendments, what you're saying is it's definitely going in the LTP consultation document. And all I'm saying here is you don't have to make that commitment now. We need to make sure when we come to February, March, and we've got everything on the table, and look, information is coming to us, all the time. And just like we got the financial update yesterday, that was new. Things change, and we've got to be flexible. But locking ourselves into saying we're going to put this in the consultation document is not the right way. Now, none of my amendments stop the work that's going on. None of my amendments stop the business case or the further investigation, because we do need that information. We've come this far. All I'm saying here with these amendments is still bring it to the LTP consultation, still put it in the mix, and it may still go in the consultation document. But we don't have to now do this piecemeal saying, well, we'll have this in, and then next month we'll have this in. And then we don't realize all of a sudden we've got all these things in and we've got no wriggle room. So I'd ask you for your support. We all know there's going to be trade-offs next year, but let's not trade off now. Let's do it, have everything on the table and make sure that we are doing things in a holistic way, because that's what the people of Wellington expect from us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now we will vote. Yep, we can take them all together.
Can I have a division, please?
Yep. and that is lost with 11 against and 7 for. Okay, so we're going to go back to debate now. Would anybody like to speak on the paper? So this is 2.1. No? Okay, so I'll hand it back over to Deputy Mayor for right of reply.
Kia ora, and thank you. And just want to acknowledge...
Sorry, excuse me, sorry, I had trouble getting onto my screen. Could I just have a moment?
Yes.
For you?
Councillor.
Sorry.
Yep, you can speak.
Yes, I'll just... Okay, thank you for this. Yes, I'm going to support this because I think this is a well put together initiative. And I think it's important that we have a good process. Having done this work, we want to make sure that the public have a say. But that said, I too am concerned about the finances, and so I just worry that this is not getting the right balance, because we need to consider everything that we need to do, as outlined by Councillor Calvert. And I have to disagree with Councillor Pannett. The city has many challenges, and some of these challenges are absolutely immediate and they absolutely have to be fixed. This is something new, but we've got a few things that we have to do and a few things that are broken we need to fix before we sort of try and do new stuff. So I sort of doubt that this will, in the end, be able to proceed, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. Right of reply, Deputy Mayor.
Kia ora, Councillor Randall. And look, just want to say that, and thank you, Councillor Calvert. I do want to acknowledge the situation that we're in, and what you're saying is valid. But we had Amendment 37 is still in here, that these decisions are for consultation purposes only, and that in the process we have at any stage we can change on this. But actually, I don't want to change, and what we need to show in this situation is some certainty in leadership, because basically we've got the whole region looking at us, and we've also got a funding opportunity with MFE. So being certain about how we want to show ourselves going forward is the better hand to play, in my view. That even if at the last minute that's not what we can do, if we don't have all our cards out, the rest of the region doesn't know our hand to be able to make their moves as well. And without the leadership of Wellington City, it is highly unlikely we'll get the buy-in of Te Awa Kairangi and Porirua as well. So just want to acknowledge that we need a whole system shift to make the change we need to. This is not just about waste, it's about emissions, it's about everything we know in life, and we're overshooting those boundaries. Councillor Pannett is correct. And we're not asking for that through this proposal. We are asking for what we as a council can do. And this proposal is what we can do. So with that, big ngā mihi for your tautoko. Thank you for your support, and we'll take it to a vote. Kia ora.
Can I have all those ones we're agreeing to put into the long-term plan separate?
Yeah.
So basically with the numbers of my amendments.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So we'll take everything except for 8, 13, 15, 24, 31 first. So, and just refer to your printout if you need to.
And if we could,
if you're on
and
Zoom.
just on my, we just have a division. Thank you.
Yep. Cool. Just while we're waiting for that to load, I just want to remind councillors that a point of order, you cannot do a point of order around clarity. That is not a point of order. Yours would have been misrepresentation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
did you hear that, Councillor Wineta?
So this is for all the ones that
this is everything except for 8, 13,
for those
15,
ones
24,
I wanted to
31.
change. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, yep, that's all right.
Sorry, could you just clarify we're voting now for 1 to which one?
We're doing every amendment except for 8, 13, 15, 24 and 31, which were the amendments that were relevant to the long-term plan.
Thank you.
Help it asked to be taken separately. So it's just a matter of moving.
Yeah. Cool, and that's carried unanimously. So now we'll take 8, 13, 15, 24 and 31.
Good job, you independent.
Should ask me next time, Tim.
And you just wanted a division on these amendments, not the...
I mean, you could do it for whatever works best, but yeah, just, yeah. So basically, this is about not voting for them to go in the long-term plan.
Yeah. That was it. Okay, that's carried with 11 for and 6 against and, 12 yeses. I've never seen that
yellow,
before,
I
so
know.
it's good. Okay, guys, let's keep it moving. So we're going to invite Chris back up to the table to introduce 2.2, Resource Recovery Network Expansion Business Case. So Chris will introduce and then we'll have an opportunity to ask any questions.
Hello again. So now we're talking about the Resource Recovery Network, which includes the hub and the spokes. So firstly, just very excited that we'll be working with Sustainability Trust to establish our first Resource Recovery Centre. It's an exciting partnership, so I'm looking forward to that. Now on to the more exciting part. Happy Valley Road is currently earmarked as a trailhead for the tip track. It's been very useful today to hear the community and the track users illustrate that this site, illustrate some of the challenges that they see in this site, and this is exactly why officers will need to work through these issues to prepare a detailed business case. I mean, as officers, we are required to provide value for money options for the community and for the councillors to consider. This is why we have proposed to explore options to serve the needs of the tip track and the tip track shop users. And to be clear, what we're talking about here is a retail front end. We are not talking about heavy materials or recycling. That will still take place at the landfill. And I think there could be a possibility, which we're looking to explore, in a world where someone can turn up and they can use the tip trap, they can come back down, they can use the tip shop and go home. It'd be lovely. Or by public transport. It could be possible. So the detailed business case will flesh this out and the practicalities of all 5 resource recovery options, one of which includes do nothing. We have the resolutions have been clarified now that all 4 options for the hub will be investigated for the detailed business case and brought back in May. Engagement with the community will be a key part of developing this detailed business case, and we are recommending that the cost associated with option C is included in the LTP consultation document budget as it represents the best value for money. So we are still exploring all 4 options. We don't have a preference there, but we're saying from a cost point of view is recommended that option C is included. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, questions? Councillor Chung.
Thanks, Chris. Just clarifying, the main reason for choosing the site is because of the proximity to the tip, correct? So that any other option that we actually look at would probably increase the costs.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Well, correct. We explore this site because it's one of the options that we're proposing to explore, and it is council-owned land, so you wouldn't have to acquire land, and there's just a value for money option that we're putting on the table.
Cool. Councillor O'Neill.
Kia ora, thank you both. Just to bounce off of what a few of the public submitters came to chat to us about, is it within the scope of this resource recovery hub to include things like better wayfinding to Te Kopaho, greater accessibility? A note as well in the paper, or my belief, it may be an old belief, is that currently cyclists and pedestrians can't make it to the centre at the moment and only vehicles can. So I just wanted to understand the placemaking improvements. Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, so that's correct. Currently, the tip shop is located within the southern landfill, and for health and safety reasons, it's not appropriate that people can walk there or use their push bikes.
Cool. And I just wanted to understand to kind of actually, no, I'll ask that later once the amendment's put.
Yep, no worries. Councillor Abdurrahman.
Cool. Chris, out of the 4 options, is there any option officers currently prefer?
It's difficult to say without actually doing the work. So what we're proposing today is to allow us to go forward and explore these options in detail. Each option has a different associated cost. We'll have to flesh that out as part of this work. I think it's too early at the moment to say we prefer this option over this other option.
Cool. In that case, if officers don't have preferred options, what is the problem of replacing option C with option A or D in this paper?
Well, the new amendment says that we will explore all 4 options.
So,
I don't think your mic is working.
Oh, cool. Example resolution number 8, where it says option C included. Is there any problem if we replace that option C with option D or option A? If not, doesn't that mean you have preference?
Kia ora, Councillor. One of the realities of the long-term plan process is that when we go out for consultation, we can only take one official budget to consultation. We can't take a range of budgets out to consultation. We have to pick one number to put in the consultation document and into that budget. Options may be offered within the document, but one number has to be chosen to go into the budget. And that's the only reason that we have to make any recommendation at this point about selecting one option over any other. And the only reason that we've put the resolution of that we have forward is because we believe it's the best value for money option. There is no reason why councillors could not choose that they would prefer to put a different number into the budget. It's purely that the officer's recommendation is purely based on the value for money of the initial analysis.
So it's not something that you strongly oppose if councillors prefer other options?
That's up to us as the decision makers. Yeah. Cool. Councillor Matthews.
So just to clarify, we're looking at an amended substantive where instead of just going down the road with option C, we are now taking all options and doing the business case work on them. And my understanding is that in response to some of the community concerns that we've heard this week, and some other, I don't know what else behind that.
The intent was always to explore all 4 options, and come back with the detailed business case.
But that's now.
That is clarified. Yep.
Okay.
It's changed. Yep.
Any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Free.
Yes, with the option that was previously identified as preferred option, option C, we did hear some concerns about the feasibility of siting that on the same place that we've designed to be a hub for the trails. In your view, is it possible to do both and do it well so we don't obscure some of the entrances to the trails, or we provide enough amenity for that while still citing the resource recovery?
We really need to undertake the detailed business case to answer that. I mean, there is a possibility there, which is why we've put it down as an option, and it is something I think worth exploring. If we can provide a value for money solution on land that we already own that suits both needs of the communities, and I think we have to explore that. But
Okay.
I'll be able to answer that in May.
So you wouldn't be exploring it if you didn't think there was a reasonable chance of coming up with something that works, presumably.
Yeah, correct. And we are talking about a retail front end here, so we're not talking about heavy machinery or anything like that.
Great, thank you. All right, so that looks like that's the end of the questions, but we will need you for the amendment questions shortly. So who wants to go first? Yeah, that's right. Councillor Pennant, would you like to move the paper?
Thank you, I will. And briefly, given we've set all the scene today, so like I was saying, in 2018, I got money for 2 business cases, and I took advice from officers at the time. We chose organics and resource recovery. These were the 2 ones that could really shift the dial in terms of where our waste was coming from. So I'm just so over the moon that this is finally in front of us today. So thank you to the staff, and I do particularly want to mention Dr. Condi, because she is such a clear writer. There was no jargon, so thank you, Dr. Condi. That was and very thorough. So it is incredibly exciting. We're going to have one at the landfill and then 2 extra, and this is just going to be the start. We will get more, and in conversations with officers, I was very keen to emphasise that we do need to make it easy for people to do the resource recovery, and that means it has to be close to where they live. Like just expecting people to get on the bus, even me, and taking your stuff to a resource recovery place is maybe a little bit OTT. So we do need things that are spread out, and of course the community are an important part of that network as well. So we will have one in the central city, biggest suburb in the city, which is great with the surrounding suburbs, and then hopefully we will have some further discussions about where those other 2 go. But I would obviously hope that the east and the west will not be forgotten, because at least the north's got some facilities out there. So incredibly exciting. And there'll be lots of opportunities to collaborate with the community. We've got some beautiful maps just showing where all these facilities are available. I'm actually going to leave the seemingly contentious item mostly to my ward colleagues, because I think they will speak to that in more detail. But let's just emphasise, it is a shop. It is not a big processing facility. We have some wording here that will act as a compromise. It's not committing. We're keeping the process open. I accept there are some community concerns, which is one of the reasons why we're doing all this, because people don't need to live next to a landfill. We want to make it into a beautiful resource recovery place. I will just say biking to a trail is something I find a little bit tricky, so roll on lower speed limits. Sorry, biking. Yeah, biking is great. Sorry, thank you, Councillor Matthews. Driving to the trail, let's just make sure our roads are safe so that people can make that a bit easier. But look, I accept there are some concerns there, and I think hopefully through this business case process there will be a chance to talk to the community about that to make sure that it's good. So this is just great. I cannot wait to see them set up and just to see people finally being able to, if we put the systems in place, people will do the right thing, and with that support and resources. And again, we're not being asked for money. It's fantastic. It's nothing to vote against. Kia ora.
Thank you. And seconded by Deputy Mayor Foon. Did you want to speak now, or? Okay, cool. So we'll start with Councillor Calvert's amendments, which you've got on your printout.
Well, you've only got the one, but it's along the similar vein to what I had in the previous paper, and but it's a separate amendment, a separate paper, so I'm going to repeat pretty much the same rationale of why this is here. As I said, is we received information yesterday, and admittedly, and this was information after the papers were put out for our consideration. We know we are going to have to reduce our capital program by at least tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. We have got other work projects that are going to have to be considered. What are we going to do about Let's Get Wellington Moving? What are we going to do about the rest of Tanaka Civic Square? We know probably more money for the town hall. We've got a couple of empty buildings there. And we know there's more. We know there's more money required for venues investment. We've got seismic issues on the bond store. We've got seismic issues on the Opera House and Michael Fowler Centre. We know we have to put money into our social housing upgrade that is part of the deal that we had with government.
Can I just question the relevance of this, given this is funded?
Yeah, no, it is relevant.
So it's starting to get a bit broad.
Well, you might.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you might get bored.
Okay, I'll just make a ruling on that. It is a bit repetitious. We did just hear the same speech, so I'll just say you can keep going, but just be aware that we heard you loud and clear the first time.
Okay. Social housing upgrade of around about $400 million that we're going to have to find money for. That's not in the current CapEx budget. We've got water reform that we found out about on Monday, which on top of all the work that we do need to upgrade our pipes, there's another probably $50 million a year. We've got seismic issues on our buildings to address, and that comes back to some of the venues. And we've got rising insurance costs that most people are facing, most businesses are facing. So again, this is why we can't determine what's actually going to be in our long-term consultation plan. We've still got more information to come out, more detail, and it's significant. It's not just minor. So that's why I'm asking you to consider this amendment to say, look, everything else, we need to carry on with the work, but agree to consider it in the LTP consultation, not make that decision for it to go in right here and now. Because as we said, we're going to have trade-offs. And this may well not be one of them, I don't know, because we're still getting more detail and more information coming to us. So it's too early to say definitely this will be in the consultation document. So I ask for your support. And I think, Councillor Free, you want to, just to change it up a bit.
So look, I'm going to speak to both the amendment and the substantive at the same time. I think, in principle, this is actually, I do support option C. I think that officer advice is mostly, it is their preferred option, but we've agreed that keep the other ones on the table for the time being. I do think that community is very nervous about change, but I don't see this as being a particularly negative thing for the community. It can be managed in the way it appears and the way it's managed from an operational point of view. And there'd be, from my point of view, like some of these facilities work in synergy together. There's opportunities for education for our local school kids there at that resource hub, I'm sure, and opportunities to maximise the car parking by allowing it to be used in the weekends or Sundays or something for those people who are on the Kōrau track. So I think that potentially there's a really good outcome there, but we'll wait and see what happens. I do support, again, for the similar reasons as I said last time, that I don't think we should lock with decisions what we're putting in our consultation document right now. I think, I won't repeat everything Councillor Calvert said, but I'm also getting really apprehensive about the scale of the issues that are facing us and the need to actually consider them properly. And a decision like this, even though we've been, had reassurances that it's not the last decision we'll make and it's not final, etc., it is a commitment to actually put something into our consultation document when we are still months away from hearing about some of the other challenges we've got. And as I said before, this for me personally is likely to be a very high priority, but for me it is about the principle. And so I will second this. And I thank Councillor Calvert for her caution. I think some of what she's been saying, it would behove us all to actually listen seriously to some of the things that she's saying. Thank you.
Thank you. So does anybody have any questions on this amendment? No? Oh. Yep, Councillor Pannett.
Can this money be used to fix water or earthquake-prone buildings?
That is a councillor decision. It's been a long-standing governance approach of this council that the landfill surplus fund should be ring-fenced for waste minimisation services. However, that is a decision of this council and this table. It is not a legislative requirement.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, so we'll go back to debate. So Councillor Pannett.
Yeah, just really briefly. Look, I can kind of see why people might have had concerns on the last paper, but this one, no. The resource recovery is absolutely critical. It's affordable. This money is ring-fenced. This is not to be used for water and earthquake resilience. And in fact, the levy, actually, there is some legislation around that demanding that we do put it into waste minimisation. And the reason that's done is to enforce some discipline on councils to do the right thing. We know that there are councils which use their money to put it into the consolidated fund, which isn't great. So it's fantastic that we have had that discipline on us, because now we've got money to spend it in the right way. I just don't think this, I'm not going to ask you to rule against it, Chair, but I just don't really think it's correctly within scope. Kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor Chung.
I won't echo the reasons that Councillor Calvert sort of brought up, but I actually like the idea of doing this. I think it's a good thing to be doing, but like Councillor Calvert and Councillor Free, I am very, very worried about our state of finances. When we had that discussion yesterday, I found that the responses, were mixed, and I just don't. I take it very, very seriously, and so I guess I'm looking at every penny. I'm looking at everything that we actually spend money on. Now, there are lots of big issues that we need to address, and this is just it's a smaller one, but nevertheless, it creates not so much a precedent, but it's the way we're actually approaching these issues. We're not considering what can we actually save on, what can we actually stop spending on, how can we spend our money more wisely. So I'll be voting for this. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Matthews.
Very briefly, I don't want to be boring either. I guess I just want to say that no councillor here has a monopoly on financial caution or taking things seriously. This is something we will all have to enter this long-term plan process with. However, that doesn't mean amendments like this make any of those trade-off conversations or the difficult circumstances we make our decisions in go away. It doesn't. In fact, it makes the decision-making process more difficult, because it will leave more decisions to be made in an enormous heap at the end. So we need to continue to make decisions as we go. And I guess I just want to also say that this is kind of a relatively simple one, and that there are funding mechanisms in here that are not too challenging for us. And I guess that kind of the question about whether or not we commit to put things in the consultation document is, we actually want to hear from the public about the challenges that we have in front of us. And that is, we'll also be making decisions at the end of that process. So I think, again, this amendment is unnecessary, unhelpful, and I will be voting against it.
Thank you. Councillor McNulty.
Kia ora. Just very quickly, this whole project could cost our entire council budget, and I would still think it would be worthy of consulting in the LTP, because at the moment, we don't know what the cost of waste is. The bags show up. Yep, we buy garbage bags, but in terms of our recycling bags, they show up, and there is just a disconnect that I have from what is the actual output and cost of waste from the way that I manage my household. And so I think the value of this program would be justified, even if it consumed the whole council budget. Obviously, we would not vote to put it through, but it would still be worthy of consultation, because consultation is a form of public education and engagement. So I just think that this work is justified. This work is justified to go into consultation and to make a clear decision on that, no matter what the trade-offs may be, and they will become apparent and clear, and we'll do those decisions. But we should have this in the public domain and up for discussion, and I don't see any harm in making that commitment now, because that's all we're doing. So that's for me. Kia ora.
Thank you. So with no more debate, I'll give it back to Councillor Calvert for right of reply.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's the trouble, that we make decisions as we go and we don't actually understand the cumulative impact, which is why when we do sit down and think about our long-term plan, what is going to go in there, what's going to go in for consultation, everything's on the table, and we take a cohesive look at it and make sure it, and the numbers stack up, because of course, obviously, it has to be audited. And for those who, I appreciate not everyone has been through the long-term plan process, and think that this might be the right way to go about it, but it's not, because we are going to have some challenges come February, March, and probably they'll come out well before then. But we need to make sure we have everything on the table. Otherwise, we end up with this piecemeal decision-making on some big stuff and some small stuff. But overall, the cumulative impact on our finances is where we are now, where we really just don't have the money to do anything more. And we're going to have to make cuts. We're going to have to make significant cuts. And yet we're still just blindly, so we'll put $140 million into the Golden Mile, we'll put, $30 million into here, and it all adds up. It all adds up. We have got to start thinking, we've got some decisions to make, but we've got to do them cohesively. So I do ask for your support. I've never claimed, I'm pleased to see I've got some other councillors on board with some accounting experience, because I never claimed to have a monopoly in financial skills. So I look forward to seeing more of that around the table. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to vote on this amendment now. Yep, so we'll get a division on that. So there we go. No abstentions. No abstentions, please. Okay, and that's lost with 11 against and 7. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I was thinking about abstentions. No. So that's, sorry, that's, what was it, 12 against?
Well, you are.
Okay, all right, let's keep moving. Now
Well, Chair, you are green.
You can. Would you like to? Would you like to? You can't go yellow. Yeah, fun fact, you cannot abstain. Okay, Councillor Abdurrahman, could you please introduce your amendment, and then we'll have questions of officers.
Kia ora, team. I think this one is a pretty easy and short one. And all what I'm asking is, one, officers agree that they don't have any preferred options. So we're going to put all the options on the table. That means we're going to replace amendment number 5, resolution 5, and just saying instruct officers to explore all 4 options in the detailed business case due in May 2024. And then we go to resolution number 8. If for the sake of just putting into long-term plan, we can just change it where it say option C, option D, and accordingly we can go ahead with this. And I think that's going to sort all out. And yeah.
Sorry, just for clarification, we've got the one amendment from you, so the one that replaces D with C? Correct? Yeah, sorry, yeah. Is that correct? Yes. Oh, okay, cool, yeah. Sweet. Okay, questions? Oh yeah, do you have a second? Oh yeah, cool, Pauiwi Hohai's got a second. Sorry, so hands up who had a question. That was quite a few hands. So we'll start with Councillor Free.
Thank you. Now, I do understand the one about, continuing to keep the other options on the table, but this one has got me bemused. What is the implication of changing from option C to option D here?
Option D, the estimate is that it is more expensive than option C. So if you include option D in your long-term plan budget, then that would be an additional $2.4 million of a capital allocation in your long-term plan budget.
Is there an option there where we just don't say what option is going to go in there until you've done the work? Because I feel like these are working against each other a little bit. You have to put an option in?
The budget has to have a number in it, and the different options have different cost estimates.
Okay. Yeah. So we vote against this if we don't want to change it to option D.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Councillor Pannett.
So just for the public, putting option C in there doesn't mean that we're going to pick option C. It's just really a placeholder, just so it's really clear. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Councillor Chung.
Sorry, what's the view of the council officers on option D then? Can you?
Well, option D is around acquiring additional land. The view is that we need to work through the detailed business cases and put up all the different options together and present back the detailed findings.
I would also, I guess, add to that land acquisition is always risky in that we don't know whether the people who own the land would want to sell it to us. So it depends on having a willing seller, and we don't know if that we will be in that situation or not.
But your view is that extra land is not required. That's my understanding?
Do you mean for option C? Well, that's something that we need to explore. Yeah, so I think that we just, if option C is on the table, then we just need time to explore it throughout the detailed business case, understand what are the different options that could serve both communities.
Sorry. So after doing the extra business case for option C, if you find that...
All four options.
Yep, okay.
Yep.
After you find that, yes, they're not viable without having extra land, then we can move. Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, we'll bring those options back to you. If it's not viable, we'll be quite clear that it is not viable.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor O'Neill.
I just wanted to explore if we have any more information between the differences of option C and D in terms of, say, carbon impact of needing to transport waste, or it's written here in the report, option C can be accessible by certain means of transport, or what do you mean under option D when it says provides best access? Because that can be interpreted in a few different ways.
Sure. With option D, which depends on land acquisition, we don't necessarily know where that land might be. And we can't guarantee that there will be pedestrian access to land that is acquired. For example, Landfill Road has a broken footpath along the length of it. You cannot actually safely access the full length as a pedestrian. So we can't guarantee pedestrian access under option D, although we may be able to achieve that. Under option C, we're confident that there could be pedestrian access, taking the other challenges and risks into account.
And understanding the two different locations, what is the understood impact difference for neighbours and people in the local community in terms of disruption for option C versus D?
We haven't done any specific work on that, but I can say if we were able to acquire land in a commercially zoned area, then resource consent should be easier in a commercially zoned area because it should also already have certain buffer areas. We are aware that the site on Happy Valley Road is zoned partially open space and partially out of residential, and would therefore require a resource consent to be able to do that. But the very initial advice we have is that those challenges are not insurmountable and therefore are worth investigating.
Right. And at this stage, there's not too much of a... is the, further resource consent resources, has that been costed and the price difference between the two options, or yet to be determined?
There is some allowance in the implementation costs for things like resource consents, etc. But we haven't tried to go into detail about determining what the different options would require.
Cool, thank you. Thanks,
Cool.
Chair.
Any other questions on the amendment?
Online.
Oh, yes, sorry, Councillor McNulty.
Hey, kia ora. Since we've decided that Codral with pseudoephedrine is not a thing in this country, you'll have to forgive my cold, addled brain here. Can you just, officers, really gently explain for me exactly what this amendment is doing? Because I just haven't had the requisite time to get across or understand what this proposed change is.
Sure thing, Councillor. At the moment, the officer resolution in the paper is that in your long-term plan budget that you will include the cost estimate associated with option C. This amendment would change or increase that amount set aside in the long-term plan budget by $2.4 million, which would allow essentially enough of a cost placeholder to fund any of the options, including option D. I think we can say that from an officer point of view, this budget is your budget. and therefore it is your decision. This amendment is clear to us in terms of what changes would need to be made. We do not see that this amendment would change the work that we will do for the detailed business case. Regardless of whether this amendment goes through, whichever number you put in your long-term plan budget, we will investigate all 4 options in the detailed business case. We will investigate all the challenges involved with each option, and we will come back with more detailed advice in May 2024.
Thank you very much, Jenny.
Okay, that is the end of our questions. Thank you so much, Chris and Jenny, for answering those for us. So back to debate. Did you want to speak, Pauwi? Okay, cool. Who would like to speak on this amendment or debate? Councillor Free.
Well, I think this kind of illustrates why some of us might have had a bit of caution about agreeing straight away this would go into consultation document, because we were talking about, apparently minimal cost, and now we don't know what we're talking about. Could be anything. I can't support this. I understand where you're coming from, but as an actual default position right now, I was much more comfortable with the default position of option C, which I'd had advice from officers from talking to them. They thought they could make work quite well. And it was our land. We understood how we would go about that process. It was it was something we could rely on with some certainty. And now if we look at this, we wouldn't necessarily know where we're going. So, yeah, I'm sorry, Councillor Abdurrahman. I understand where you're coming from as a ward councillor, probably wanting to do the best for your local communities. But to be honest, I think the other option would have been fine, and a whole lot more achievable.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Matthews.
Brother, I do really want to support you, and I think that this amendment does come from a very good place. However, I think I want to do the work to go through the options, and I want to listen to the community about what their concerns are, because I think it's very early to kind of change from one preferred option to another on the basis of the information that we have. And I guess my concern is that option D, there's too many unknowns as well as being additional costs. So I 100% support the intent. I thought that making explicit the 4 options was a good compromise, and I just want to be very clear that we need to put a preferred option here, but I really want to hear from the community about what their concerns are.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, kia ora, and I don't think I can kind of add to Councillor Matthews, but I just want to thank the Awhiaro community, and I just want to acknowledge I completely understand the concern and the challenge that we've got. Firstly, we need to establish we're lifting this up, and I'm really happy with the amendment that we are going to explore all options. And while we're doing that, another one might fall out of it. This is really just a press go button to start exploring and understanding the bigger scope. But I think the reality is very clear here. We've got a city that's growing. We've got changing needs of what we need to make this city work with our environment. We've got new sludge systems out in the east. We've got density happening in the central city. And the list goes on. So I really just think we need to pull back, lift up, look at all the options, and I agree with Councillor Matthews. I really want to hear and understand more before we go directing what the outcome might be. So I'm afraid my ward brother, I cannot support you, although I support your intent as well. Kia ora.
Anybody else? Cool, we'll move to right of reply.
Cool. Kia ora whānau. I'm not expert, but a voice for the community that I represent. Yesterday, we received dozens of emails from the community who were concerned. Before I go into why I support this amendment, I ask you to support this amendment, why options D is better than C. I will mention those people who emailed us in respect of the time they took. Ofiro Bay Resident Associations, Adam Hollow, who previously came, Gerard O'Connell, who was about to fly to Christchurch, but 1 hour before his flight, he stopped by, he emailed, and he called. Sujit Singh, Debbie Hehenkamp, Jody Taylor, Stacey Parbo, Emily Costa, Carly Menzies, Joshua Malunas, Maddie, Andrew Gunn, Robert Hooper, Emma Stephens, Michelle Carly Alcori, all worried about these resolutions. I'm here today. Those are the community members who voted for us. I'm here to be their voice. Their concern is very simple. It can be addressed easily. The only option that I see compromising, supporting the community at the same time, also a good outcome for climate, is option D. Here is my reasoning. It's easy for the resource consent because it's not complex. That's what in the paper it says. Further resource recovery works to occur at the current tip shop site, which don't involve much public interactions. And the other big point, option C, not socialized with the community. The community, they just heard it and we kind of panic button. Even if it's the best option, consulting, engaging with the community, socializing issues should always be, I think, the priority. And I do understand some of you might not support, but if you read the paper, I'm sure all of you read it, the only reason why option D is less appealing than option C is one, the 3 million differences. I'm not exactly sure the number now. That's the first one. The second option is we need to be acquiring lands. Previously, when we do any discussions, if there is any land acquisition involved in a paper, it goes to public excluded. In this case, it's not. Why? I'm not sure. Have you already preferred the option that we want to put there? So that's going to send a bit of an issue as well. So in saying that, if you don't support, I absolutely understand. And again, I'm not an expert, but I'm a voice for the community. I want you to consider when to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll vote for this one now. Did you take mine?
Wide.
And that is lost with. Okay, thank you. So now we return to the main debate. So would anybody else like to speak on the paper? Cool, so I'll hand it back to Councillor Pannett for the right of reply. That she doesn't need? Woohoo! We'll hear from her again shortly. Okay, so you wanted to take something separate? What would you like separate?
It's the one where I had the amendment.
You want to take your amendment separate?
Well, the one where I wanted it to, you want us to agree to go into the long-term plan consultation. Yeah, number 12. We could take that separate.
Let's do 12 first.
And a decision, a division, please.
Yep,
Thank you.
Cool. So this is just 12, which is on your screens. This is the original that was in the paper as written. Yeah. And that's carried. And
Thank you, brother.
And then we will take the rest of the amendments.
That was a bit weird.
Sorry, the rest of the. This is the rest of it, yeah.
Now.
And that's carried with 1 against. Thank you very much. All right, now we are going to move on to the submission on the draft GPS on land transport. So I'll invite Siobhan Proctor to introduce that paper.
When do we stop for a break? This is transport.
Good. You good? Okay. So this paper is our proposed submission on the government policy statement on land transport. So government policy statements basically set out the government's strategic priorities and objectives for a specific area of public policy. In this case, it's around land transport. It also determines how funding will be allocated across land transport activities, and is a key direction-setting document for the National Land Transport Programme and the National Land Transport Fund that supports that. And it's about this time, in the next few months, we will be submitting our business case and asset management plans to Waka Kotahi for approval, and that will then determine what our portion of the Land Transport Fund is. We have Ben Henderson and Sean Ordain up here. I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, Ben, and then we'll open for questions.
Thanks, Siobhan. We'll keep it really brief because we appreciate we're sitting between you and lunch, which is always a scary place to be. So overall, officers do support the GPS as it currently stands. Overall, the priorities it proposes are pretty much broadly in line with what we're already doing as a council and as a city. I think in particular, I think it's worth noting that the reintroduction of resilience as a strategic priority is a really key thing and a good thing to be seeing coming from central government. Obviously, we've had that as a key issue front of mind for us over the last 12 to 18 months already, and for the rest of the country even more so, but particularly thinking back to the weather events up in the Upper North Island earlier this year. There's 2 key things we'd note that's worth you just keeping it top of mind. The first is that while there's an overall funding increase being proposed of $5.3 billion, it isn't necessarily clear where there's actually going to be new expenditure in the activity class levels. So essentially what the draft GPS shows is the total proposed spending per transport activity class, but underneath that it doesn't give an indication of where there's going to be new public central government expenditure available, which then means it's not as clear to key stakeholders in the sector, but particularly local government, where we should be directing our efforts if we want to try and access that new funding which is going to be made available. And the second point that I'll make is, while we've heard at least generally positive murmurings as a start from most of the political parties about the introduction of congestion charging, the GPS paper currently isn't explicit about undertaking any steps to introduce it. It implicitly talks about it through road pricing, but there aren't any clear steps that the paper spells out. Given that there'd need to be regulatory and legislative change in order to implement that, it's probably worth considering, if we want to be calling out to central government, that they really need to undertake further work to get the ball rolling or not. So that's something worth considering. And yeah, keep it nice and snappy.
Nice, thanks, Ben. So we'll go to questions, but I just wanted everyone to check, because this is an amended substantive. So Councillor Pennant has put a range of amendments in here. So if you have any questions about them, the opportunity to ask them is now. So Councillor Free.
Yeah. I guess one of the things that I noted that I know has been a bit of a frustration for some of us is that we don't have a bus plan. There's this, it talks in there about the rail plans, and I wonder if that's a point we could maybe make in our submission, that it'd be really good for the government to ask, our public transport entities to prepare bus plans. And it's actually having an impact on us not knowing, for example, how we're going to manage reducing a lane on Hutt Road, because we haven't got a bus plan to tell us that the 1,000 less people are going to be accommodated in the buses. So I don't think it's out of order for us as TAs to actually highlight the fact that these a bus plan would be really useful. And if I'm happy to leave it to you and Iona to talk about if there's a mood around the table that it could be useful to work on the wording. It could be fitted in with introduction of a framework around MRT and more clarity about, and more clarity provided in terms of bus plans for each region.
Cool.
I guess I'm asking if for some advice. I know I made a big long statement, but it was kind of
Yep. Let's
so
get an
essentially, yes, that could be slotted in with that particular point. We would just need an amendment to instruct us to alter the submission.
If Councillor Pennant wants to craft one up to add to omnibus, or I can bring it.
This submission is due tomorrow, by the way, so
it's a very
really
minor
not
wording
the time to be doing stuff on the fly. So
it has been busy.
Hang on, we'll just go Councillor Matthews.
I've got another question about another matter. I just wanted to find out whether any of the amendments that there was violent objection to, or okay. Thank you. No, non-violent objection. No, okay, good.
No, we have assessed the amendments to make sure they're clear and that our officers could execute them quickly. It is up to you what you want to say to government.
Cool. Councillor Pennant?
Yeah. Just wonder if I can be helpful. I did, at the request of Councillor Randall, put something in about the Regional Land Transport Strategy Committee about improving the bus services in Wellington. So could we just add in and a bus plan? And then Tam can sort out the wording. I'll sort out the wording tonight. Is that all right?
Yes, Siobhan said yes. Okay.
So, Sean, is it all right after just maybe a commitment to regional bus plans and improving bus services in Wellington or something like that?
Cool. Councillor Chung, do you want to ask your question?
Looking at these amendments in there, I tend to think that when you guys look at a plan and when you start devising a plan, that you will look at all considerations. So you'll be considering the differences between the different options. And I feel that putting all these amendments in seems to be making it very restrictive, and I certainly don't like the second one about putting more money into it. So I think that I have confidence in you coming out with a coherent plan to actually give us different options and different costings for the different things. So do you think that having all these in there makes it more restrictive on what you can actually do?
So to clarify, we are submitting on the government's plan. This is not our plan. As I said before, it's up to the council what you wish to say to government. My only advice on behalf of the public service is that a smaller number of messages given more clearly does make them more effective.
Oh, I'm seconding. Any other questions? No? Thank you so much for that. And it's great to see that Councillor Free's point was incorporated. Okay, so I'm going to second the paper. I don't think I need to speak. Oh, you need to move it. That's right. Councillor Pennant.
Look, I'm going to be really quick. I appreciate people want to go. So, look, I did take a very comprehensive look at the document, and I guess this is a good submission, but I did feel some things needed to be added to it. So, first of all, just some stuff around the positive things from my perspective. I think it's always good to give credit where credit is due. Councillor Matthews, I channeled you. Just a little bit. Just around, look, I just always get a little bit scratchy when we're just talking about a whole lot of objectives. I do think we need to prioritise emission reduction, and did put in sustainable urban and regional development. Sorry, I mucked up the wording a bit there. And safety, because safety has been downgraded in this GPS, which the officers had obviously didn't think that was an issue to raise, but I do feel that the wording from the previous GPS significantly weakened it, and I want all of us to be safe on our roads. It's great that the Regional Land Transport Committee thinks that this draft is actually not ambitious enough, so we're just going to support them. Look, this is a really straightforward issue around the future of transport funding is really important, because we're going to have more electric cars. Not enough. Not that many, maybe, but nevertheless, given that we're reliant on petrol-fueled cars, this is a tricky issue, and it needs to be given a much higher priority. I talked about the strong focus on preventing deaths and serious injuries. They have definitely weakened the language, and it's actually just kind of sad. I know they're still saying road to zero, but nevertheless, these are the things that I look at when I look at a document. I do want to support councillors who are very focused on the bus services, because even with MRT, which of course I support, we are still going to need a lot of buses. It is not going to be able to meet all our needs, as well as good pedestrian and cycling facilities. So I'm very happy to improve that. It was interesting that the officers from the Regional Council did not pick up that suggestion, so I am going to have a further conversation with them about that. Look, this is a straight policy wonk thing. I thought the measurement framework was weak and it needs some more analysis. And just because, as you know, I will always try and pick up the gaps where we've got different population groups. They did in the GPS talk about Māori and disabled people, but also I just want to add in our rainbow communities, children, teenagers, and our multicultural communities. Kia ora.
Thank you, and sorry, I will second it, but I do not need to speak. So, Councillor Matthews.
Very quickly, I'm going to vote for it, but I don't love a rewrite. And if you were channeling me, I mean, I just wish we would maybe pick a few things, and that's just my vibe. But I'll let you off this one time.
Cool. Councillor Free.
Yeah, look, I'm a bit with you, Councillor Matthews, because I am incredibly focused on the bus service, and the latest resident survey actually showed that 29% of our actual residents in Wellington City use the bus, compared to only 7% of our actual residents that use the train, and yet the investment that's going into trains and the huge amounts of dollars and the actual plan they've got to improve the train service is well above anything we've ever seen for our precious bus service. And yes, MRT down to Island Bay will be lovely, but there's a huge amount of our city that's still going to need a really good bus service. And we're finding it hard to get any real data and, in advance, like years advance, which is what we've got to think about from our regional council. But I'm not picking on them. I'm just saying I think the government, generally speaking, owes it to communities to actually ask our transport providers to have a bus plan. It's been a very neglected part of our transport system. So, if something can be worked in there, I'd be very, very appreciative. Otherwise, I thought actually it was a good submission. It's really, really heartening to see their focus on resilience, because I was listening this morning on the radio to people who are now having to take 2 hours to travel anywhere from Gisborne because their roads are stuffed. So that needs to be a real focus for our country. And this isn't just about us in Wellington, this is actually about the country. I know we put our own spin on it, but I thought generally it's a good submission and a good strategy. I just would like to see a bit more focus on bus plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Calvert.
I wish Councillor Pannett had been channeling me. I'm not going to support these because I just think there's far too many things, there's far too many fish hooks. It's not really, whilst I appreciate Councillor Pannett's commitment to this and the work that she's put into it, I'm not sure whether it actually is representative of the majority of Wellingtonians. I did sort of have a little bit of surprise to understand that Councillor Pannett was actually moving this paper. So, look, I appreciate Councillor Pannett and I are often on opposite sides of this discussion. But so, look, I will be supporting number 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Randall.
Hello. Thank you. I'm very disappointed in this, in the GPS statement, and I'm also disappointed in the City Council's submission to it. Really, you could read this paper and not even realise it's about transport. The city is all about people being able to form communities together. And one of the big things is that the whole point of getting Wellington to be more accessible, enabling people to travel around to get to where they need to go, is the main thing for our transport policy, and yet that seems to have been lost somewhere in the last 6 years. Our transport policy is not about getting people around. It's about all these other things you can see up here, which are largely not about ordinary people being able to get to the shops, get to work, get to school, or get to sports. And I'm very disappointed. Yes, there's a little bit in there about the bus service, but that actually epitomizes the entire way that the council and the government have worked together to sort of stop transport, really. Yes, the biggest climate change benefit is when people stop travelling. The biggest environmental benefit is when people stop travelling. And we seem to have a transport policy that's focused on stopping people from travelling, and this is wrong. And for those reasons, I urge you to vote against the submission, because I surely will. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Cool. Right of reply, Councillor Pennant.
Very quickly, we're talking about the planetary crisis, so just part of that vein, that this is the response to that. I like to listen to scientists. Councillor Randall, I think one of the big shifts that the government has made is, and that's why I was channeling Councillor Matthews, not the number of amendments, was to link it carefully into planning and land use, and that's what should be happening, and that's very important. And actually we are in the Regional Land Transport Committee one, as well as this one, talking about the active modes and buses. Like, there is a lot in there, and certainly we are not about stopping people from travelling. No one is doing that. We're just suggesting that could be done in a more sustainable way rather than using fossil fuels. But it's all about access. Kia ora.
So we will take, there's only 1 and 2. So we'll take 1 to receive the information first, and then we'll take 2, which is 3. So let's do 1 and 3. Yeah. Okay, so we're doing 1 and 3, which is receive the information and authorise the chair to and deputy chair to finalise the submission. I don't know about that. No, I didn't see deputy chair. He's voting green. Did you hear that? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So receiving the information and authorising the people. Cool. Whoa. Unanimous. And then 2. All the amendments.
It's on I.
Oh, we're not taking those separately. No way. No way. Otherwise, me and Tim will radically change it. Okay, I'm just waiting for the Zoom. Yeah. Is that frozen? Oh, so just the people on Zoom, I think we're just having some trouble seeing your votes.
We don't know what we're voting on, sorry.
Oh, so we're voting on the second lot of amendment, the resolution 2, so that's got all of Iona's changes in red. Yep, and that will be a division. Cool. Awesome, thank you. And that is carried with 11 in support and 7 against. All right. All right, so moving on to the last, I'm going to combine action tracking and forward program and ask Siobhan to introduce the papers.
I'm happy to introduce these papers and take them as read and answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? No? And my seconder just walked out. Who wants a second? Yeah, Councillor Free, thank you. All right, let's vote. He's a... Yeah, no, don't do that. Okay. Yeah, that's all right. Awesome, and that's carried unanimously. That brings us to the end of the meeting today. Thank you, everybody. Special thanks to Sean and Tian for helping us today, and for Siobhan and everybody. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so here's the closing karakia. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te uru tapunui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua, I te ara takatū, koia rā e rongo, whakairia aki ki runga, kia wātia, ai rā, kua wātia. Oh wait, okay, so one more thing, sorry, there's a briefing on the open spaces plan, but how long do you want do you want to do that now, or do you want to, you can take a full lunch break if you want. An hour? Do you want an hour? And come
We
back
would
at
have to
1:40?
check with
1:30?
Ella.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, turn the mic on.
Have we checked with the team? Can they
Have we checked with officers?
They can do it whenever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so so it's up to you guys, because
do whatever you want with that?
just